is Right to Life Radio with John Girardi on Powertalk 96.7 and AM 1400, a production of Right to Life of Central California. And now, here's your host, John Girardi.
It's the first Saturday of the month, and every first Saturday we have Stories from the Sidewalk with Right to Life's own Linda Talia, where we talk about all the great work we are doing outside of Planned Parenthood. Before we get to it, though, I just want to very briefly state, it's a topic that we can't talk about at length on the show because there's ongoing litigation. We at Right to Life of Central California, as many of you may know, there was a story about it in the Fresno Bee earlier this week. We are involved in a lawsuit against the Attorney General of California, and it's a lawsuit regarding Senate Bill 742. This is a law that was passed in October that limits the kinds of free speech activities that people can engage in the immediate vicinity within 100 feet of any vaccine site. Planned Parenthood happens to be a vaccine site. It's the fact that they provide HPV vaccines has never been really anything we're that concerned about. But this law basically was prohibiting the work of our sidewalk advocates and volunteers, people like Linda and so many others, making them unable to approach women and couples who are going in and out of Planned Parenthood to offer alternatives to abortion. We have prevailed, though, in sort of the first sally of our first round, I guess, of our lawsuit. We have received from the federal district court here in the Eastern District of California, from the court in Fresno, we received a temporary restraining order against the state of California that prohibits them from SB 742 from being enforced by the Attorney General of California or anyone acting in concert with him. So we've been announcing this on our various social media platforms, and I'm just announcing it here. Now, if you want to read more, you can go to our Facebook page. We have a post on it. It has the press release from our attorneys at Alliance Defending Freedom, who did such a wonderful job representing us in this. And that means that our sidewalk advocates and volunteers are back to doing what they do best, interacting with women and couples going into and out of Planned Parenthood. So with that out of the way, just because we can't talk about it too much, it's ongoing litigation, I welcome Linda Talia to Right to Life Radio. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you very much.
All right.
And we're back.
We're back, yes. So we're
back on the
very
sidewalk,
happy.
back on the radio.
Yeah.
And it's a really great story to tell.
Yeah, well, yes. So do tell the story, because this was like the day before that law was signed, which, again, we won't talk about the law anymore. But the day before that law was signed and came into effect, you had a great interaction with a young person, with a young couple outside of Planned Parenthood. So why don't you go ahead and tell that story and about how that story's developed.
It's just ironic how it transpired in God's plan.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I think any other time we all would have been like way worse in our attitude about it, you know, what happened. And at least for me, I was just kind of like, yeah, well, good luck with that, because we're going to be okay.
Yeah, well, and things are turning out well. So,
yeah.
Anyway.
So anyway, a couple of days before that happened, I can't remember if I talked about this before, but I'll say it again.
Yeah, go for it.
We'd had another breakfast. We'd had a breakfast for one of the moms that had chosen life, and there was some things I was thinking about, and I just said a prayer. You know, Lord, give me an opportunity to speak your words. So I was feeling a little discouraged, because I always feel like it should be every day that someone's changing their mind, because I talk to them.
Right, of course, yeah.
I'm a little competitive.
Yeah, well, sure. Well, and
it should work.
It's a thing where, like, I mean, if your batting average is even, well below the Mendoza line, sorry for using much baseball terminology. Even if your batting average is low by baseball standards, this is still Hall of Fame level work. So anyway, so just be comforted in that.
So I just said that prayer, and then off to the sidewalk I went, and about 3:30 somebody walked out of Planned Parenthood, and I just approached her the way I do all of the people now. We are now doing this thing where we offer a flower,
right?
And it makes it better. It's a great door opener.
Yeah, so we just get flowers from florist or Costco, wherever, and we just instead of saying, hey, would you like some literature? Instead,
Yeah.
you're saying, hey, would you like this flower?
Yeah,
okay.
they for sure don't really want the literature, but
Right.
most people want a flower.
Right.
So anyway, I just said, hey, would you like this flower? And I'll usually say, which color do you want? I think orange really goes with your hair or whatever.
Right.
And then they kind of laugh and come over and pick up the flower. Well, that's exactly what happened with this young woman who was coming out. She walked up and said, yeah, I want this flower. And so then we talked.
She was coming out? Okay.
Yeah, she'd just gone in for an appointment and she came out and I asked her just a couple questions and I said, hey, what do you have going on? Are you possibly having an abortion?
Right.
And she said, I think I am. I don't know what else to do. And I said, well, would you like to talk? And she said, yeah, I think so. And I said, well, come on over and we'll go talk about this. And I'll just, I'm not here to change your mind. I'm just here to give you some things to think about and maybe a bigger picture. And so sure enough, she came over and I don't always do this, but I whipped out the babies so she could see.
So by the way, what we mean are little models of babies. Yeah, you don't have. It's
They're
not
in
like
the closet.
you don't have any live babies in your purse or something. Okay, so
Come out, kids.
You brought out some models of babies at different stages of development in the womb, where it's sort of showing.
I might actually be turning red.
Yeah. So this is what a baby looks like at 10 weeks. This is what a baby looks like at 16 weeks. Anyway. So you got those babies.
So
out.
I walked into the building and I walked over to the model babies.
To the model babies. Yeah.
And I took her over there and I said, so how far did they say you were along? And she was like, well, they said I need to schedule a surgical abortion. So right then
So you know that they're past 10 weeks.
Yeah. So I said, well, let me just check this out. She's like, oh my gosh, it looks like a baby.
Yeah.
I said, so much for all that gibberish about a clump of cells.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just asking, what do you think? And she was like, baby.
Yeah.
That's a baby.
Right.
And that's my baby.
Yeah.
And so I said, yeah, it is. But let's talk about this. And so we went into the other room and we just started talking and she was just really scared.
Sure.
And she has the father is in her life and they live together. And so that's it. That's a help.
Right.
And so we started talking, and then usually I'll call on Sarah. She'll come on FaceTime, so she came on. She can give it a little bit younger perspective.
Sure.
And it was pretty interesting because as we were talking, I could actually see the light go on.
Yeah.
And she really did say, you know what? I'm pro-life now.
Oh, wow. Well, that's cool. Jeez.
I'm going to keep this baby.
Right.
And so there were several questions, and I did get a chance to interview her. And I said, could you tell me what was something that we talked about? What is something maybe I said that helped you turn the corner?
Yeah. And that's a good thing because I mean, obviously you don't always get the chance
Feedback.
to do like an exit interview or
No.
feedback. So yeah, that's
right.
So what did she say in response?
She said, the first thing that you said was it was going to be okay.
Right.
You can do this.
Yeah. Well, and we've talked about that so much, the idea of providing people with security factors. That, I mean, you mentioned that, the baby's father is still, in her life. They're still in a relationship. Yeah. That's, and in later interactions, it seems like he's been supportive of it. So that's one security factor, having, but even just to have someone else in your life who's telling you like, hey, this is okay. You can do this.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
sometimes you just need to hear it. And because you want to believe it anyway. And if someone says it out loud, then all of a sudden you have that. And I guess I appear pretty genuine because I said, we're here for you.
If you can fake sincerity, you can fake anything. So no, just kidding.
No, I mean, that's the bottom line is I am extremely genuine about the whole thing. Well, because when I say we'll help you, then some of the things that we put together, I'll tell you that in a minute. But in between that time, she ended up having her the father of the baby come in, and she told him, I want to keep the baby, and he said, I'm here for you, whatever you need.
Way
and
to go.
So
good for him.
I was like, yes. What a great day.
Yeah. So what has been the follow-up? So
the follow-up has been...
Because that's always been for us important, that it's not just, you get them to say the words, I'm not going to have an abortion. And it's
Right.
like, all right,
Yeah.
all done.
And
so
you
what's
know,
the follow-up then?
the left always likes to say, oh, you're only in favor of the fetus, and then it's all over.
Right, exactly.
That is just not true.
Right.
So after that, and also one of the things that we talked about was I asked her, you know, if she talked to her mom much and, you know, all that. And she was like, I'm not telling her. I'm too scared. She's going to be mad and blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
And I said the same thing that I usually say, which is, you know what, give your mom a chance to be a mom.
Right.
Just give her a chance because, and I asked her how old her mom was. And I said, look, you're older than your mom was when she had you. I think she's going to be okay. And she's like, you think? And I said, well, so
just
if
a guess. Yeah.
I just said, so if she's not, what'd you lose?
Right.
You know, you lost nothing. You're already scrambling. You already are not sure what to do. So, oh well, you know. So
It's
sure,
not like her mom's not going to find out eventually. I mean,
yeah,
that's the other
she's
thing.
gonna
Yeah,
know.
Yeah.
So her mom was in Mexico
Okay.
and wasn't coming back, and she didn't want to call her on the phone and say, "Hey, by the way, on your way back, you might want to be thinking about this."
Yeah.
So she was going to wait. Well, in between that time, I really wanted to make sure that she really owned this pregnancy.
Sure.
So Sarah and I made arrangements with Dr. Holmes to.
And Dr. Holmes is one of our board members. She's an awesome pro-life OBGYN. She's going to be the medical director for our Obria clinic. So I contacted her and she said, bring her over. So we got her over there for an ultrasound. So then they really saw their baby. They both came and Sarah and I were invited. They got to see the ultrasound. And then, so then that was it. Well,
they were
awesome.
all the way in and she was for sure going to tell her mom.
Awesome.
It took her 2 weeks to tell her mom because I would be texting her, hey, have you told your mom yet? She's like, not yet. I'm like, hurry up and tell her, will you? Let's get this out here. So she finally did. And she called me and she said, Linda, my mom was thrilled.
Oh, that's
She was
good.
so happy that she was going to be a grandma. And then I talked to her about some of the things that we talked about. And she said, how could you? And I said, well, you know what? Now you don't have to think about that because she's going to be a grandma.
That's awesome.
And so I don't know. Do you want me to tell you?
Well, talk a little bit just about the little event we had in this last minute or two we have here.
I'll do that.
So we threw a little event for her over at the Outreach Center.
We had a little, I don't know really what we'd call it, but we had a breakfast and invited the two of them and the board members for our organization and some of the employees and some volunteers that have helped out a lot. And we just got an opportunity to get to know them and to reassure them that we would be there for them. And one of the things that we did was I reached out to a man who's been sort of involved with our organization and asked him if he'd be willing to mentor the dad.
Sure.
Because he needs to finish school and some other things. And he said, sure. So we introduced them at the celebration or
the breakfast.
The
whatever.
breakfast.
Little shindig we had.
We had that. And then also I contacted the Students for Life and I asked them if they would be interested in hosting a maternity clothes drive.
Sure.
So they were going to do that. And then our organization does a baby shower anyway. So I can't think of anything we're missing.
Right.
And we've developed a great relationship. On Halloween, she sent me a text with this hugging emoji, and I was like, "Wow, that's pretty
so
neat." Yeah,
yeah. Well, it's so cool just because just to be able to try to provide for as many things as we possibly can, and that's how Obria is going to fit into all of this: is to provide the medical side of it, to provide the material resources. You know, it's just a great sort of all around thing. Yeah.
Leading into that. Dr. Holmes was actually at the breakfast and she talked to our mom and said, you're going to come in. And I'm guessing she's going to be the first patient.
I think she's going to be Obria patient number 1.
Yeah, she's she's our mom.
It's
awesome.
It's
and
really
couldn't
cool.
be better.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, Linda, thanks so much for coming on. Again, every first Saturday we do our Stories from the Sidewalk segment. Thank you again, Linda. It's always great to hear these awesome stories. All right, when we return, we'll be back with Jonathan Keller. We're going to be talking about the Texas abortion case, what we're looking at the Supreme Court. Next on Right to Life Radio, right here on Power Talk. John Girardi with you. Right to Life Radio with John Girardi. Joining us in studio, the man, the myth, the legend, the guy who spends more time in Northern Virginia, probably than most people who live in the Fresno area.
The mediocre fill-in radio host.
Who filled in for the John Girardi show a couple times last week. The only man I would trust to fill in behind the golden John Girardi network radio microphone, Mr. Jonathan Keller.
Hey, good to be here.
It's good to have you back.
Yes, I was up late last night following the Virginia election results.
Yeah, that was surprising and interesting. I don't know that we're going to get into it too much, but I will make just this general comment that for all of those Republicans who are constantly saying, well, we got to get away from those divisive social issues. Just focus on fiscal conservatism.
That's right.
And it's like Glenn Youngkin.
Kevin
Faulconer, yeah. When Glenn Youngkin was dead in the water like a mere 5 weeks ago, and after really leaning into the whole CRT issue, which it's not the abortion issue, but it's certainly a hot-button social issue, leaning into that for 5 weeks, and all of a sudden he wins the governor's race. So maybe leaning into cultural issues is a better idea than just focusing on fiscal conservatism. Anyway, that aside, I want to talk about the Supreme Court, Mr. Jonathan.
Yes.
As you know, on November 1st, the Supreme Court heard oral arguments in the new Supreme Court case about the ongoing controversy over the Texas abortion law.
And John, I have to pause. I think a lot of people right now are going to be confused because they're saying, well, wait a minute.
Didn't they just do one of those? Didn't the Supreme Court already rule on that?
Yeah, and isn't there another case coming up December 1st? Which case are we talking about? What's the difference between December 1st and November 1st?
Okay, so a lot of things are happening at the Supreme Court involving abortion and abortion cases. So allow me to break it down for you.
After a kind of relative drought, it's kind of rare that we get a lot of SCOTUS abortion jurisprudence normally. But the last couple of years have been a big deal.
All right, so let me explain what's going on. You had 2 months ago, the Supreme Court heard a kind of emergency petition regarding the Texas abortion law. Texas abortion law bans abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy. It enforces it not through criminal penalties, but by allowing people to sue abortion providers who do abortions. The Supreme Court denied the request from the people challenging the abortion law because the people challenging the law were suing the governor of Texas, the attorney general of Texas, all these public officials, and the Supreme Court said, well, we can't put an injunction against these people because they're not actually enforcing the law. If you want us to stop the enforcement of the law, you have to sue the people who would actually enforce it. And what Texas did was it deputized basically everybody not just in Texas, actually, anybody in America, can file a lawsuit against a Texas abortion provider on these grounds. So basically, the court said, well, we can't put an injunction against the heir. We have to put an injunction on a person, and you've sued the wrong people. All right. So the Supreme Court threw out, they decided, no, we're not going to stop the Texas abortion law the first time.
John, I thought the Supreme Court could just do whatever we wanted to do.
It cannot do whatever you want it to do. Well, although 4 of the justices on the Supreme Court thought they could do whatever they wanted to do. So we're on this 5-4 knife's edge. What the Supreme Court heard on November 1st was a second lawsuit regarding the Texas abortion law. This was filed by the federal government, by the Department of Justice. Merrick Garland filed this lawsuit on the grounds that this constitutional right is being violated. The only way we can vindicate this right is by us, the federal government, suing on behalf of these women, whose right to abortion is being hindered by this Texas abortion law. Now, we don't have a ton of time in this segment, but let me give the sort of bottom line approach here. The bottom line here is that the federal government shouldn't be viewed as having standing to sue. They're not the ones who have this constitutional right to abortion. It's individual women who do this purported constitutional right to abortion. So the Supreme Court, unfortunately, though, seems poised to say, no, the federal government has the right to sue anytime they see that someone's constitutional rights are being violated. We'll talk about why that's a problem in the next segment. This is Right to Life Radio on Powertalk 96.7 AM 1400. John Girardi and Jonathan Keller. Thank you all so much for tuning in. It's Sam Cook Week here on Right to Life Radio, the best bumper music in the greater Fresno area radio market. This segment of the Right to Life radio program goes out to Dr. Joe Girardi.
Hey.
Dr. Joe Girardi, who is recuperating from surgery right now at, as much as I hate to say it, at the University of Southern California, where he had his surgery. Our thoughts and prayers and best wishes are out for my dad, Dr. Joe, longtime supporter of Right to Life, and obviously someone I love and care about very deeply. So best wishes to Dr. Joe. Hope everything is doing good, and hope you appreciate the shout out. I'm guessing he's going to listen to the podcast and hear this. So,
and just the Keller family is also praying for Dr. Joe.
There you go.
Just FYI.
Girardi kids, pretty much every night. Yes. What are we praying for? Pray for Papa that he feels better so that he can go swimming. So that's a
good
prayer,
reason.
In spite of the fact that we're not going to go swimming for about 8 months here. Anyway, that's fine. Best wishes to Dad. Hope you're feeling better. All right. And to Dr. Sharon Girardi, my mom, who has been a trooper through the whole thing and is also probably listening to the podcast. So love you, Mom. All right. Let's talk, Jonathan, about this Supreme Court case. Now, as I explained in the last segment, we're now in our second round of Supreme Court deliberation over the Texas abortion law. Texas abortion law bans abortion after fetal heartbeat is detected. It does so not by imposing criminal penalties, but by letting individuals in Texas sue abortion providers, other people aiding and abetting abortions.
And John, one point on this, just before you launch in. Some people, because I've heard even some conservatives say, well, but, isn't this really just...
this is not the best way to do it.
Yeah, it's too clever by half. I mean, do we really want, rogue lawsuits flying around, vindicating, blah, 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 trying to enforce this law?
They already are flying around.
And the thing I tried to point out to people was there are multiple states, including that radical right-wing state of California,
right,
that we literally have something called PAGA, P-A-G-A, the Private Attorney General Act,
right,
that allows it deputizes citizens of the state to enforce laws on behalf of the state or state government.
Right. Like you can be working for a company if the company is engaging in any labor violations at all, even if one that's not harming you, you can sue the company and get a little bounty. So, there's all kinds of ways in which you expand the pool of people who can sue for stuff, and usually you do that when there's not a natural person readily available to sue, like happens in abortion, where it's an unborn child who has died, and you can't rely on the mom or dad to reliably sue because the mom at least requested that the child die. So who is going to sue on this child's behalf? Let's extend the pool of people who can.
And John, in many cases, from what I've read, talking to Senator Shannon Grove, who I remember having a discussion with her here from California when she was Assemblywoman Grove, talking about PAGA. As she pointed out, the fines, the bounties for enforcements in the state of California can often be a heck of a lot higher than $10,000.
Right, of course. Yeah.
I mean, relatively speaking, this is actually modest compared to other places.
Right. Anyway, so the where this has gone at the Supreme Court heard a petition from a lawsuit surrounding the Texas abortion law. Once they declined to intervene because they basically said, you Texas abortion providers, you're suing the wrong people. You're suing state officials in Texas. They're not the ones who are supposed to enforce this law. They're not the ones who are going to enforce the law. Okay? So we're not going to grant you this relief. That was a 5-4 decision, okay, with Roberts joining the liberals. Seems sort of redundant at this point to keep saying with Roberts joining the liberals. Maybe he just is a liberal at this point. Anyway, so it was Roberts and, the usual suspects ruling against it based on the theory of there has to be some way to stop, to provide some defendant or someone to sue appropriately in a situation like this, and then they proceed not to give away for how a case like this should be resolved. Anyway, so this is the second go around, and this is a lawsuit filed by the federal government basically filing it against various court officials in Texas to issue an injunction against them to prevent them from taking any of these kinds of lawsuits that the Texas law foresees, lawsuits against abortion doctors for providing abortions. So the problem in the first case was that they were suing the wrong people. The problem in this case is maybe both that they're suing the wrong people and that that the wrong party is suing. Okay? So you have the federal government suing Texas not because its rights are being harmed, but because the rights, allegedly, of women in Texas are being harmed. Now, Jonathan.
Yes.
Let's suppose a drunk driver crashes into your house, smashes into your living room.
Yes.
All right. I would be upset.
I would be as well.
I care for you. I would be upset. I would be upset for my poor friend Jonathan. I would be offended. But I can't sue the guy.
Right.
As much as him crashing into your house would pain me as your friend, and it would, I can't sue him.
You do not have any standing because you don't have any direct injury.
I don't. Exactly. You can sue him.
Right.
If you were,
and I probably would.
Yeah, and you probably would. If you were killed by this person, Julia could sue. It's her house too, I guess.
That's true.
Or God forbid, everyone in your house is obliterated. Your heirs for your estate, whoever the heirs of your estate are through California intestacy law.
Not intestinal law, but
not intestinal law, but intestacy. Who I think would probably be like your parents. Anyway,
whoever we have there,
your estate could sue. Your legal heirs could sue. It would have to be someone though with a connection to you. Basically, you can't just sue someone because you saw a bad thing happen. Okay, that's the general rule for standing. Obviously, there are exceptions, like in the Texas abortion law, but generally speaking, you have to be harmed in order to sue. What we have here is the federal government suing, not because the federal government's interests were harmed. It's not like the Texas abortion law is, breaking windows at the Capitol building. The federal government is suing on the theory that this is violating a fundamental constitutional right, and we have to intervene to stop it. And so, if this is allowed to go on, basically what you'd need is for the Supreme Court to come up with like a whole cloth new legal doctrine that they're just going to pull out of their ear.
It's a polite way to put it.
Say, which I could have said it much less nicely, basically come up with this whole new legal doctrine out of their ear to justify, why is the federal government allowed to be a plaintiff in this kind of a lawsuit? Just because Joe Biden likes legal abortion? That's the reason? Ultimately, because Joe Biden and Merrick Garland think abortion is cool. So, what is the limiting principle? And the limiting principle, I think, is that, they're not harmed. They shouldn't be allowed to sue.
And John, so let me ask this, because I will say, and you're the attorney. I just sometimes pretend to be one on the radio when I'm hosting your show, hosting your show.
Right.
I did see some concerns, and I actually saw that a Second Amendment rights organization, which, by the way, just standard disclaimer, neither of our organizations take an official position on Second Amendment rights.
Things.
Blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah.
Yeah.
I'm a gun owner, but that's as far as I'll say about that. But in this case, the Second Amendment group, I think it was the Firearms Policy Coalition.
Sure.
They filed an amicus brief saying, we are concerned that potentially, if this law and this legal standing expands, then what is to prevent, the state of California from suing people? The rough example I heard was, what if Turner's Outdoorsman, the sporting store here in Fresno, let's say that they sell me a firearm, a handgun or a long gun, and then the state of California says, you can't sue Jonathan because those are his First Amendment or his Second Amendment rights, but you can go sue that store and for $10,000 because they sold Jonathan a firearm.
Sure. Well, what you do is wait for that lawsuit to happen and then litigate it there. Like that's the thing. So basically there's this notion, who are they supposed to sue? How are they supposed to do that? The way it's supposed to happen is an abortion doctor will probably just do an abortion.
Right.
Which is horrible and evil and horrific. Someone will sue him, and then you duke it out in the state courts. I mean, that's the way to do it. But what they want to do instead is, no. We don't want to have to actually litigate this in the state courts. We want to have a quick, rapid-fire solution to get the Supreme Court to intervene,
right?
To vindicate this for us. And I just don't think that's an appropriate avenue for doing this.
And John, the reason I think they're so legitimately terrified is because a report came out just a couple days ago that said in the first month after this Texas law was in effect, the number of abortions performed in the state of Texas that were reported in the state of Texas fell by like 50%.
Right. Which also our friend Michael New, who has done events for us at Right to Life Central California, he's a great guy. He's a research. He's a professor at Catholic University of America, and he's done a lot of great research surrounding the pro-life movement. He had a fun tweet, which
he's pretty good on Twitter.
He is pretty good.
If you meet him in person, he's a dry person. He had a fun tweet
that said where he noted the drastic drop in the number of abortions in Texas since his law was passed, and he said, "But I thought that pro-life laws don't work, and that the best way to reduce the number of abortions is to spend millions of taxpayer dollars on contraception programs." Which he's tongue in cheek here. It shows that actually pro-life laws do work at reducing the number of abortions. That's the whole point of it. Anyway, so here's my frustration with this Supreme Court hearing. They had the oral arguments on November 1st. And from the questioning, it seemed painfully clear that, and it pains me to say it because I love her and I want, not love, but I like her a lot. And she's my former professor and I don't want to be slandering her without good cause. And God knows, she hasn't actually issued her opinion yet, so we don't know.
Devil's advocate, maybe, possibly?
Amy Coney Barrett asked some questions that very strongly indicated that she's concerned about the procedural side of it, that who's the right, like how does the allegedly aggrieved pro-abortion side, how do they find a way to sue somebody? Like she's much more concerned about this little procedural difficulty seemingly by this question, and again, we don't 100% know, and we're just sort of forecasting here, but she and Brett Kavanaugh seemingly were more concerned about the procedural problem of the abortion advocates not having a convenient party to sue or having a convenient party to do the suing than they were with anything else. And that it seems as though the court, certainly the liberals on the court, and probably Roberts and possibly Barrett and Kavanaugh, are willing to just create out of thin air some kind of rule to basically not allow laws like this Texas law to be passed ever again. And that's really frustrating.
Yes.
It's really frustrating. And this is frustration coming from everyone in the conservative legal community because they're basically saying, look, so now we're going to give the federal government standing to file lawsuits just whenever, and the Justice Department, more particularly, the Justice Department with its inexhaustible $80 billion budget, to give them the ability not just to vindicate, legitimate federal government interests, not just to vindicate the interests of the federal government when they're harmed, not to prosecute federal crimes, but to now become this superhero for the alleged constitutional rights that the president endorses, to swoop in to a state that passed, a duly passed state law, to try to overturn it when Joe Biden doesn't like it. I mean, it's a kind of judicial supremacy thing that I think should really, really concern us. All right, more on this when we return. This is Right to Life Radio with John Girardi and Jonathan Keller.
That's true.
John Girardi and Jonathan Keller with Right to Life Radio. All right, Jonathan. Speaking of a song that was played during Animal House, which was set at a college, I went to visit my beloved alma mater, the University of Notre Dame, just last week. Went to the Notre Dame USC game, had a wonderful time, saw a lot of old friends there, and I got to go to a little talk by the director of Right to Life Michiana, which was very funny because it was like someone who, in my exact job, but in northern Indiana, southern Michigan.
That's what they literally call it, Michiana?
That's sort of the South Bend area that includes like Niles, Michigan. Anyway, Right to Life Michiana.
How fun.
It was a very similar organization to ours, sort of an independent, local pro-life educational organization that does, sidewalk counseling and all kinds of stuff like that.
We're Right to Life, but not that Right to Life.
Not National Right to Life. Also not affiliated with National Right to Life. Anyway, yeah. Affiliated with National Right to Life. Anyway, all right. We've talked enough about National Right to Life on this show. So Right to Life Michiana, but then one of my old professors, Carter Sneed, who wrote the best pro-life book I've read in a long, long time, What It Means to Be Human. The Case for the Body in Public Bioethics, which is a wonderful book. It's available from Harvard University Press. Best pro-life book I've read. You should read it. And then Sharif Girgis. Sharif is an awesome guy. He's just been brought on to be a law professor at the University of Notre Dame. Sharif was a student of Robert George's at Princeton. He and Ryan Anderson wrote the book on gay marriage. Sharif, which was cited by, I think, Scalia in his dissent in the Obergefell case. Sharif is a Rhodes Scholar, Harvard Law, and I think Princeton political science PhD. So, a real slouch. And clerked for Justice Alito. And Sharif just had an op-ed that was published in the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, about the Dobbs case. And he and Professor Snead were talking about it. So the Dobbs case, as you know, this is the big abortion case. This is basically the Supreme Court deciding, are we going to uphold Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey or not? Can states ban abortion as such prior to fetal viability? That was
kind of the Super Bowl for the pro-life movement.
It is the Super Bowl. It's like the Super Bowl and the World Cup. Only
the Olympics,
if they happen every 30 years rather than every 4 years. So this is the granddaddy of them all. This is the Supreme Court case, which will have oral arguments on December 1st and be decided in June of next year, probably, where we will decide whether or not we're going to uphold Roe v. Wade or not. And Sharif is a former clerk also of Sam Alito. Okay, so he clerked for the Supreme Court, meaning the Supreme Court clerks are young lawyers who work very closely with the justices, help them write their opinions. These guys are, usually future superstars in legal academia and in legal practice. So most Supreme Court justices were themselves Supreme Court clerks. Ted Cruz was a former Supreme Court clerk. Like a lot of, you're on the path to very high things.
Neil Gorsuch.
Yes.
Supreme Court clerk.
Yes. Gorsuch was, Kavanaugh was, Roberts was, etc.
Yep.
And Barrett was. So basically, a lot of people have sort of floated this fear that the court is not going to overturn Roe v. Wade. A lot of pro-lifers are afraid that the court is not going to overturn Roe v. Wade. And Sharif is of the opinion that it's going to be a 6-3 decision and that the court will overturn Roe v. Wade. And he made this point. He even thinks John Roberts is going to rule to overturn it. And he makes this point. So basically, you have to either keep the status quo or get rid of it. And clearly, the court wants to at least uphold the Mississippi law that's at the center of the Dobbs case. This Mississippi law bans abortion after 15 weeks. Basically, Sharif said they wouldn't have taken the case otherwise. And he said, there's no way to uphold that Mississippi law without overturning Roe.
The Casey standard prevents it.
And he basically said it this way. John Roberts isn't going to write some Anthony Kennedy thing about the triumph of the human spirit requires that freedom requires that everyone be free to choose when a baby's life begins. Yeah. Basically, what Sharif says is he needs a kind of lawyery thing. He needs a thing he can actually cite. Something from legal precedent, American history, something. And there just isn't anything. And basically, so what he's saying is, look, I just think that there's nothing in legal precedent to support, okay, you can ban abortion, but not before fetal heartbeat. There's no real precedent for it in American history or legal tradition. Before fetal pain can be experienced. Well, there's nothing in American history or legal precedent. And
Occam's razor. So the simplest explanation is
the most likely. So Sharif, both Professor Girgis and Professor Snead are both of the opinion that the Supreme Court is going to overturn Roe v. Wade and that it's going to be a 6-3 decision. Now, I think that's an optimistic viewpoint. They're certainly a heck of a lot smarter than I am.
And
have a lot more experience. I hope they are right. I just wanted to pass on that very interesting perspective to all of you, and let's pray that that's indeed what happens. All right, that'll do it for Right to Life Radio. Thank you so much, folks. We will see you next week.